Welcome to the GameDev.tv Community Podcast. I'm your host KB, and I would like to introduce you to industry professionals and people who successfully made their path to the video game industry. I hope that you will enjoy the podcast and get useful tips that will bring you closer to achieving your dreams. Now, let's get right into the podcast. What's up, GameDev.tv? Today we got a special guest, Nathan Kellman, joining the show. He's an incredible designer. He's got some awesome work on ArtStation, and we have him on the show today to talk about level design and all that good stuff. So Nathan, can you introduce yourself a little bit to the community, and then we'll go from there?
Yeah, hey, what's up, everybody? Name is Nathan Kellman. As Brandon said, I'm a level designer right now on Project RubyShark. I also recently just graduated with a master's degree from Michigan State in May. May. Yeah, that sounds right. And yeah, man, just love playing games, like working out. I like long walks on the beach, all the fun stuff.
Yeah, can't go wrong with long walks on the beach.
The great things we can't really do right now, yeah. So,
I know.
Do you have beaches over there, Ricardo?
Well, they say they have, but they're not really, good beaches.
Yeah, I don't think so. But anyway, it is what it is.
Yeah, but, the Mediterranean is, kind of right here, 2 hours away or so.
Oh,
so it's doable.
Awesome. So, Nathan, when did you get started with, your love for games or levels? How old were you when you first played your first game?
Oh man, how old was I? It was a long time ago, but I remember I used to play Nintendo 64. The first thing I can think of was Pokemon Snap, and
okay.
Yeah, just going around, take pictures of Pokemon, I fell in love with it. And probably around when I was 15 years old, I realized I wanted to make games because I was playing a lot of the JRPGs and things of that nature, and just falling in love with the storytelling and the mechanics. And it wasn't really till I got into college, my undergraduate from my last year, when I got into a game dev minor and started taking game dev classes, learning a lot of 3D art, game design, all that. And I just really fell in love with the process, fell in love with this making games. And around the time I was doing my master's is when I wanted to be a level designer, just playing a lot of Uncharted, Last of Us, a lot of those games, really fell in love with this, using the environment to use storytelling and to guide the player where to go. So, yeah.
Awesome. So you said you got into level design during your master's?
Mm-hmm.
So what were you into beforehand? Were you just doing game design or less games and just going to school for trying to figure it out? How did that process go?
Right, yeah. So for undergraduate, I didn't get into games really because my undergraduate degree is architecture with a minor in art and game design, and I didn't get into game design until my last year because that's when the minor had just came out and switched from computer science to then. And at first, I wanted to be a 3D artist. I didn't know I wanted to make characters or environments, but I just really always loved doing art. And during my master's, I switched to design because while I was in my undergrad, I did a competition for one of our game development clubs. And I had a chance to pitch my own game, and I actually came in second, and I had a team work under me. And that's when I really learned a lot of the game development process, just working with people, understanding design. And doing my master's, I really switched to design because I really love trying to figure out what makes a game fun for a player. And if we did projects, I always end up doing the levels, not realizing that was a real job until when I kept doing it. And, I realized, I really like doing this level stuff. And then I found out, wait, level design is a thing that, someone has to build those environments. So that's when I really started focusing on that. And also let me combine my level design and art together into one job.
That's awesome. You must have felt amazing when you were wait a minute, I could do this for a living?
Yeah, I was always wow, wait, I can just move blocks all day. Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, put music on and just chilling. Sounds pretty easy, right? But there's a lot of complicated stuff that comes to level design. So what is one thing that people should really focus on when they're trying to start level designing?
Man, I would say when you want to get into it, that's a good question. Yeah, I would say when you get started, just playing games and understanding the environments, how they guide the player, how is to tell the player what mechanics they're supposed to do. Just really paying attention to things like that, because a lot of games, when you when you start getting into LD, so yeah, when you first start getting into level design, you really want to pay attention to this how spaces are set up. Because first-person shooters are going to have different spaces than like an Uncharted traversal. Because in Uncharted they have like the little white corners on the rocks, so you know that you can climb there, or having places where you go up on top of the hill and you see a huge vista, like, oh yeah, we're going to that temple over there. First-person shooters, there's a lot of cover. You have to understand like how to have the player flow through the space. So I would definitely say just pay attention to that. And another thing is when you start really getting into it, just observing the environment around you, like in the real world. And like there are times where I'll walk around the house and I'm like, I wonder how this would be if I put the couch here and it was like a first-person shooter. Or what if I was like walking down the street and like, oh, what if the player wanted to climb up this building and then run across the rooftops like Assassin's Creed? So it's just become observant of how players and people move through spaces, whether in game or in real life.
So that was key. We were saying we were like walking around and just seeing like game moments in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So like I don't think a lot of people realize that, but like a lot of what we can build in games comes from the real world. So the best way to do it is to go out there and experience life or watch and observe it. Yep. So how did you know to start doing it, or did you just it was naturally for you?
It was just like, I think what it was is as I got more to level design. So I took a class from CG Master Academy called Level Design for Games. It was taught by Patrick Haslow. I think now it's by someone named Shane Canning, who currently works at Square Enix. And the videos are made from Amelia. I can't pronounce her last name, but she works at Naughty Dog. And that's really taught me a lot about how, like, looking up real world references. So if you're wanting to build a level, say, based in New York City, then look up things from New York City. Go to Google Maps, look up the little 3D maps, see, okay, how am I going to guide a player through Times Square, maybe? And really just, because especially for a lot of games, like, say, Last of Us, or even Part 1 or Part 2, they take real-world locations, and then they end up just using those as gameplay spaces. I think I read a blog from Michael Barclay, who's a game designer at Naughty Dog, and he said for what the team did for Last of Us Part 2 for Seattle, they actually went to Seattle for a couple of days, visited a couple of places, got a bunch of references, and then when they were building the game, they actually built up Seattle in 3D in Engine, and then they started breaking it down to see, like, okay, what would Seattle look like, 20 years from now if a pandemic would have happened within the Last of Us situation. So yeah, just really just really understanding that there's a lot of inspiration from the real world, and definitely like in architecture is a really big part of it.
Yeah, sadly, the pandemic part is also now kind of the real world as well.
At least there's no zombies.
Yep.
Yeah.
Never know. We just need some Juggernaut and Speed Cola, we'll be fine. So, what made you want to get into game design as your like minor? Like, was it just playing the games? Like, how did you go that way?
So yeah, for me, when I was in high school, like around 15 years old, I remember I was playing the game. It was called Dragon Quest VIII: Journey of the Cursed King. Honestly, one of the best JRPG games ever. And I just remember that was like the one RPG that I played multiple times. And as we may know, JRPGs are long, like the 80 hours. And I replayed it like 3 times because I was crazy. And I just really fell in love with the game. And that's when I knew I wanted to do games. But the thing was, the circle I was in with my friends, no one really knew anything about, like, we knew, like, we liked playing games, but no one knew really what it took to make them. And it wasn't really till, because I also was playing football at the time. I played football from high school to college. So, of course, that, like, ate up all my time. But in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, like, man, I would love to get an opportunity to play games. And really, my last year, I found out there was a game design minor. And as soon as I found out about it, I went to my counselor. I said, hey, man, like, switch me into this, like, right now. Because this is, I've been waiting for this opportunity since I was, like, 15 years old. I'm now, like, 21, 22 years old. I'm like, yeah, this is definitely what I want to get into. And then once I got into it, man, I just really fell in love with it and haven't looked back since.
What were the classes like?
So for my undergrad, the class I was taking, because it was still new, it was taught by Professor Andre Thomas. He used to be the head of graphics for EA, so he worked on a lot of the Madden NCAA games. And for the first class we took, it was mostly about paper prototyping. for a project, we ended up doing a board game / card game, and I was an artist on it. And for me, that was really amazing, because just learning how to balance a card game, how to make all the art. It's just like, man, the fact that there are people who sit down and they have to think about this stuff and see how it all works and how it all interconnects with each other just to make the game fun. When I did my master's at Michigan State, they had a game development minor themselves, but because I was a graduate student, I was able to take it. And for those classes, what happens is, in the first class, what is Game Design Development 1, is when you get into small groups for about 6 weeks apiece, and you just make games together, just trying to get to know people in your cohort. Then the next class is the prototyping class, where they kind of split you up into even smaller teams, so maybe like teams of 2, teams of 3, and you guys just make prototypes. You just sit there and make 1 to 2 week prototypes, and then after halfway through the semester, you then take one of those prototypes and try to build up something to a higher standard. Then the third class, which was Game Studio, is when you would take that prototype and make it into a year-long project, and you try to get that as good as possible. And the last class was Capstone, and for that one at Michigan State, it was pretty much like the one prior for a semester-long class, but you have an industry professional working with you as a mentor. So the year I was there, we had people from High Moon Studios, Insomniac, Volition, Iron Galaxy, and Bungie, because MSU has a lot of alumni in the game industry, and they always love trying to come back and get back to the community.
That's awesome to hear. But dang, that sounds like great class to help you learn how to fit into the actual industry. There's a lot of things where it's like, hey, learn this theory, learn this snap, but it's like the main thing you got to do is build games and work with teams.
Yes.
Might as well just do that. So what are some lessons you've learned from some of those classes, like how to work with a team and some different game design tips?
Yeah, I would definitely say, number one, if you want to be a designer, being a designer doesn't mean you have all the ideas. It means that you take people's ideas and you figure out which ones work best for the game that you're building. And I think this is a funny thing, because a lot of times people say, oh, well, if I give you a game idea, you might steal it. But in the industry, everybody has ideas, from the guy in QA to the creative director to the head of the whole studio. And it's more of, as a designer. So say if I come to you and we're working on Call of Duty, and you come to me and you're like, oh, Nathan, I have this cool idea for a dragon flies out of nowhere, and you gotta have a sword to fight the dragon. And for me, I'm like, okay, that sounds cool, but we're making Modern Warfare. That doesn't make sense for the game we're making. So for you as a designer, you have to take those ideas and figure out how to make them work within the systems that you're building.
Maybe you can have a plane be called the dragon, and then a sword be the gun, and then that's how you can fit into the game.
Yeah, and that's when the talking starts, man. That's when the ideas start flowing.
Yeah, see, so you'll be like, it's cool, but it doesn't work. Well, maybe we can make it work, and then brainstorming happens. That's how being creative is. Just think about it differently. But yeah, that's awesome. So you were talking about you were ahead of a team at one point in that competition. So what did you learn as a lead, being a leader in the game dev industry? How should someone follow in your footsteps, I guess, to lead their own teams?
Oh man, that project was interesting, because for me, I had just gone into game design, and that was, hey, Nathan, here, lead 20 people to make it. And it was
crazy. How did you do it?
It was, man. I had a great team, man. I had great leads that helped me out, because there were some days I was like, yo, how do I even do this? And it's like, hey, Nate, it's okay, we got you. I guess what I would definitely say is, if you're going to be a lead, and this probably goes for anything you do, is just get to know the people that you work with. Everybody have different personalities. I'm going to talk to Ricardo different than I talk to Brandon. You know what I mean? There are some people where you tell them, hey, I want you to go make me this. I want you to go make me this level. And they'll be like, okay, cool, I'll go make it. And then they'll come back to you, and you don't have to really worry about it. And there are some people where you'll give them a task, and sometimes you might have to be like, hey, man, how's that task going? So you just really have to understand and learn who you're working with, because everybody's a different person. You have to treat them as your own person.
That's great advice. So did you have any problems with any of your team members in that competition?
I I mean, yeah, man. It's just, I mean, the thing was too is like, we're all students, also,
Yeah.
own thing. And I think for me personally, just me learning the whole game development process, understanding, the differences between real time rendering and like movie rendering. Because I remember there was one time, because the game idea was like you were this ninja trying to steal treasure from a dragon that was in the lair. I remember I wanted something crazy like, yeah, so I want the player to walk on top of like the piles of gold and the gold falls down. And my friend who was a tech artist was like, bro, like we can't do that. Like, and I remember I showed him a clip from The Hobbit of Smaug where Bilbo's like running around with coins everywhere. And he was like, bro, we're not making a movie, we're making a game. So it's just even for me, just learning the differences between real time rendering and movie rendering. And I was so happy to be with people I was, because they, of course, they had so much more experience than I did, so they're able to let me know and kind of teach me like, hey man, this is how we kind of go about it. And I guess another thing I would say too, for advice, just understanding the different disciplines, because what happens is when you understand, maybe if you're a designer, you understand what a programmer does or an artist does, you're able to talk to them about what they're doing. So for me, I have an art background, and I love talking to artists about art. So whenever I'm building a level, we talk about, how can we guide the player, what kind of silhouettes we want things to be so they're recognizable, all type of things in that nature. And what happens is also you can even understand how long things may take. So if you give somebody a task and they're like, oh yeah, it'll take me like, maybe 2 weeks, but it's going to take you like a week, then you're like, okay, don't you have to just do this, this, and this? And it's like, oh yeah, let's go do that. So definitely like learning to split, because also as a designer, it will just help you become a lot better. But yeah, when it comes to the teammates I had, man, of course, we had times when people may have different ideas or different things of that nature, but we always got it worked out, because like I said, once you get to know the people you're working with, you know how to respond to different situations depending on the person.
That's true. Now, what's great is the idea you said where like understand all the different disciplines. That's really key, especially when you want to be a leader, because you can't just tell someone, hey, make something like epic, like a giant building with all the detailed stuff in one day, and it's like, as a 3D model, you'd be like, it's gonna take a little longer than that, and you're like, oh, but you can do it now, you're really good. It's like, no, it just takes time. So understanding that is really important. And in fact, one of our guests gave a challenge. It was like, if you're a programmer, do like an art assignment, or if you're an artist, do just like figure it, like go in there and like just challenge yourself, but also like get to see how they work, and maybe it might be more challenging than you thought it was, because that's a really cool idea. And also, I've done like a bunch of different courses of programming art, and it just really like you get so much of doing like a low level course, even if it's like, for like a couple hours. You really start to understand different things, and it makes your eye better to like, oh, maybe even though your program is artist, you can like see something. You're like, oh, wait a minute, I know a little bit, like that could be a little bit like shading, and fix that up, and oh my gosh, it's so much better. Like just little details that you might not think important. You can still get to know that, get to tell the person who's an expert at it, and they'll be able to create it better, because it's hard to like convey ideas if you don't know how to like speak about the technical terms and stuff like that. So I love them. And so you said you had a background in art. So did you like draw all the time when you were younger, or was you like drawing, painting? What kind of art was it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I always just liked, I used to draw when I was young, just draw little things here and there. Loved watching cartoons and things of that nature. And as I got older, I started taking art classes, but I really wanted to get into 3D. And then once I got to Texas A&M, which was my undergraduate degree, which I went to my undergrad in, I had a chance to, get into that. And I, had friends who were already in that program for 3D art that really helped me learn how to use like Maya, Substance Painter, and Unreal Engine and stuff to that capacity. So yeah, I've always really enjoyed it. I mean, I think even now, just when I see, it's just funny because even when I play games, I will see just like the art within the game. And sometimes my brother would get mad. It's just like, hey, can you play a game? I'm like, bro, I'm trying to look at the tessellation on the ground of this texture. Or like, no, look at this rock shader. Look how. So I'm always I'm always one of those guys who just sometimes will just, instead of fighting the bad guy, I'll be like, oh, let me look at his textures. Let me see how they texture his armor or something like that. That's
just being naturally curious.
Yeah.
Explains probably why you're a great level designer, because you're actually like, how do they do it? Let me try to do it my thing. No, it helps with anything, especially when it comes to game development. It's just like you're a programmer and you're trying to learn something new. Let me go find out how they did it, how they wrote their code. Same with art. Like there's just so many things which is like, That's how you grow. That's how you learn, and then you take that and make it your own. And boom, there's something new is born.
Yep.
So for that competition, what do you think allowed you guys to come in second place? Was it the ideas, the game design, or just the team effort?
Man, so pretty much, so how the competition went was, so pretty much how it went was like, it was actually like just my idea alone that I pitched, and then we had people split into teams within the club. So really it was all like my idea. And I remember I had different ideas, and I went to my younger brother, because for my younger brother, he also understood a lot about game design. And I remember I was pitching him different ideas, and he was like, hey, you should do this one. And the idea I ended up going with, and it was called Don't Wake the Drake. And like I said, the idea was like you were this thief who was trying to steal treasure from a sleeping dragon. And if you woke up the dragon would try to go around the lair trying to find you and everything of that nature. And so you would try to get the treasure and head out. And I remember I did the pitch, and this was really funny. So my professor, Andre, he was one of the judges. And I remember I heard from people, they're like, yeah, man, Andre's a really tough judge. Like, he can, he'll roast you, your ideas are bad, this and that. And I was actually very nervous about that. And I remember I did my pitch, and people were asking me questions. And then Andre is sitting there, and we're all waiting for him to ask me something. And it's like we all turned, looked at him, and he didn't say anything. And I was kind of like, wait, that's really kind of weird. Like, what? Why did you not say anything? But yeah, I ended up coming in second. The guy who won first, he was like a PhD student who'd been making games for most of his life. And the guy who was in third was the guy who was in third actually won the competition the year prior. And yeah, I mean, I guess they really liked the idea that I had. I remember I went to Andre the next day in class. I was like, Andre, how come you didn't say anything during my pitch? Like, he was like, there was nothing to say. It was a great pitch. And I was kind of like, oh wow, like I just impressed my professor. Used to work at EA. Like that was really cool.
Yeah, wow. And then
Yeah.
how do you think you did that? Because you said like the guy was a PhD student in first place, third place guy already won, but you said this, you're starting out, you just came in, had your idea, and came in second. Like, how do you think that happened? You were studying a lot of game design, or you just had a great idea? Because like,
I think because I had a friend of mine who he was a graduate student in the program, and while I was working on my pitch and my ideas and stuff, I will always go to him and ask him stuff like, hey man, what do you think about this? Or even ask him like, hey, what do mechanics mean? What does gameplay mean? Just trying to really get a lot of that terminology, a lot of that knowledge. And I think really working with him, it helped me out a lot. But yeah, as far as me coming in second place, man, trust me when I tell you when they announced my name, I was very surprised. I was like, wait, what? And there were like 8 people who pitched. So congrats to all of them too, man. But yeah, that was very surprising.
Now, do you have any advice for anybody who like needs to make a pitch? How should they say their pitch, deliver it?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely with pitches. One thing, don't use a lot of words. People don't like to read. No one likes to read a paragraph, and I think that was one thing. I remember seeing the pitches. We had one guy who did a pitch, and he had one slide that literally looked like he copy and pasted from his GDD, from his game design document, and it was
no way.
I swear to God. And I remember during the thing, Andre was just like, I don't want to read all this. But for me, what it was, so what you want to do is like have pictures, have visual cues on your screen. And then a lot of the stuff, like, you talk about it because you want them to pay attention to you. You want them to see the picture and be like, oh, okay, cool. That's an idea. And then they want to listen to you talk about the idea. Definitely sound confident when you're pitching an idea. Make it seem like, yes, like this idea is going to be awesome. So definitely have, because it's your idea, it's your baby. If anyone needs to have faith in it, it has to be you. And yeah, man, just really have fun up there. Just and then it's a pitch. There are some pitches you'll do that are really awesome, and some I've had really good ones. I've had really bad ones. So let's go up there and have fun with it.
Mm-hmm. That's the key thing. Have fun. We're making games. Well,
yeah,
we should be having fun, right?
Yep.
Now it looks like you've played with Unreal, Unity, Maya, all that stuff. How does someone really learn to understand these engines without getting confused or boggled down by all the stuff that's in those engines?
I would say, man, I would tell people, think about a game, maybe try to recreate something from a game that you like and try to look up those different mechanics or different things that they do. I think that can definitely help a lot because at least then you'll have a goal in mind, right? So don't go in there and say, I'm going to make a WoW in Unreal Engine. No, man. Like Blizzard got 5. Trust me, I've heard it. I've heard people who are like, I'm going to make a game that's going to like beat WoW and beat League, and I'm like, hey man, you can try it, but I'm just letting you know that's a lot. But just maybe you can think of something like, hey, think of like a level from God of War that you really like, or maybe a mechanic from Ghost of Tsushima, or there's something from a game that you really enjoy and try to recreate that. So you can just look up tutorials and see, okay, how did they do that axe throwing mechanic in God of War, or how do they do the like sneaking in Metal Gear Solid, all type of things, and just Google with your best friend, Google everything. So many things that you will learn from Google. I remember even for me, because I also was a teaching assistant at Michigan State, and the one thing we try to get a lot of students to get into was using Google, because it's the fact of like us as TAs may know a lot, our professor may know a lot, but there are going to be some things where we will not know, and there'll be someone out there on Google on the forum that will let you know, like, oh, you're trying to make this thing? Oh, okay, well, here's this 2-page document I typed up, just so I can have people look at it. So yeah, Google is your best friend, man. And also taking classes like the CGMA course I talked about. There's also stuff from Udemy where they have game development classes. So that's really trying to soak in a lot of that knowledge.
100%. You just never know. Like even the axe thing, I looked it up on YouTube a while back, and somebody made it Unreal. So I followed the tutorial, and I was like, "This is so cool." Now, Ricardo and I and everyone in the podcast is a joke where we say don't make WoW, and it's funny you literally said that. You're like, yeah, don't make WoW. Don't go in there, and because it's like people always come out of the gate being like, I'm gonna make the biggest game possible, and it's like, no, just make something super super small.
Yeah.
Make it, be proud of it, put it out there, let people see it, give their feedback, go to the second game, improve upon it, and keep doing it until you get like the game that you want.
Yes.
But going straight out, you might never finish your game if you just do something huge.
Oh yes.
And you always think your idea is amazing, and you never find out that it actually sucks if you don't put it out there,
Yep.
And then you start polishing and learn from your mistakes. The first game is never gonna be the next WoW.
No.
Don't make WoW.
There's never gonna be a next WoW. The genre is kind of dying. Just
yeah, I never really. I mean, I didn't like RuneScape. I didn't like WoW. I don't know. I like the first-person shooters, the story games, and the RTSs. The one where you like Total War, Age of Empires, Rise of Nations, Civilization. Oh, that was my childhood.
I had a huge Rise of Nations phase.
I was a Pokemon kid. I played all the Pokemon games. I still love Pokemon.
Yeah, actually, I played Leaf Green on my first Game Boy, like 8 years ago.
Oh man.
That was the first game I ever. No, it wasn't. Actually, Donkey Kong was on the Game Boy Color, the old one where it had.
Yeah.
Man,
Oh,
you never beat those games. They were so hard.
They were, man. They took them time, but now I wouldn't say it's easier, but I say because people are playing games so much now, is just people are learning, man. People are learning.
And I'm curious, what's your favorite Pokemon?
Bro, that's out of all 900s.
Yeah. Do you have one that like just hits you? Just like this is the one.
900.
There's
251. That's
the original, man. I'm talking like I would honestly probably go with Charizard.
Oh wow, that's mine.
I gotta go with Charizard,
it's
bro.
Hard
Charizard's
to
OG.
The originals.
Yes.
So out of the 150, it's enough for you then. Okay.
Yeah, no, they definitely made the Pokemon games a lot easier. Like Sun and Moon, I remember playing the game, and they have it to where after you fight a Pokemon, they tell you which attacks are super effective, which ones this and that to a Pokemon. Yeah, and I was kind of like, bro, but like that's almost like if I'm playing Call of Duty and there's just a thing on the AI saying the AI is going to go left and right, and the game. I remember that game being so easy. And I'm like, man, kids have it easy these days. They don't understand back in the day when I played Pokemon Gold and there was a Sudowoodo that was a rock type, but you think it's a grass type. So, they made it a whole lot easier. But I mean, it was still fun though. But I was just like, man, I kind of miss it being a little bit harder.
So I'm curious, for like game design purposes, do you think they also design the game to be even easier? Because I hear people don't like the new Pokemon games. Like, what do you think changed?
I think with the Pokemon game, I think the example with the new Sun and Moon, I think it's just because they're trying to appeal, because Pokemon's always something that a lot of kids love to play, and I think it's a thing where if like the game hasn't really evolved with its audience. I haven't really had a chance to play Sword and Shield because I don't have a Nintendo Switch yet. I need to get one. But I think it's just a thing of where they're still trying to appeal to younger people and younger generation. And it's the thing is like for us, we've been playing that game since we were young. So of course, we would love for it to evolve as it goes on. It's almost like with God of War. God of War 1, the first one, of course, was appealing to a certain audience. And now the newer one is like it's grown up, with us. So I think it might be something like that. I think they're still fun games, but definitely, I wish it was a bit more of a challenge. And I think because since I'm now a designer, I think about these things. So I'm kind of like, oh well, they could have tried doing this with this, or they could have tried to do this, or take this out.
Yeah, because my friend actually has. Oh,
go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say my friend has it on the Switch, and it's cool because it's everything I ever wanted when I was younger. It's like 3D now; you can actually see the fights, the moves.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm wondering why people didn't like it because I was like, it looks pretty good. The Pokemon are really there. It should be the best game ever, but I guess not.
Yeah.
I think the issue is also it's a 20-year-old franchise. It's kind of done everything they could already.
Yeah, no, that is true. I mean, sometimes people don't like change, right? I'm currently playing Infinite Warfare. I remember when that first came out back in the day, everyone was like, "Oh my God, Infinite Warfare is so bad." And I'm playing. I'm like, "This is Call of Duty in space. Like, this is some really cool stuff." But for some people, if you change one thing about something that they really love and enjoy, they just go bananas over it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If it's not World War II, I'm not playing. Simple.
Not boots on the ground. I like boots on the ground, but I thought Black Ops 3 was fun, where you could like double jump away from people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then Infinite Warfare, I played a little bit of it. I didn't hate it. I thought I actually was, and actually I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. There are some things too, I think it just feels differently. I don't know. There's like this weird thing between Infinite War games and Treyarch games. I like Treyarch games more. They just feel more. I don't know. I flow with those games more. I vibe with them. I get the most kills. Mm-hmm. But I think it's just the same thing when it comes to game design. It's just different people appeal to different things.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Everyone has different likes. I mean, for me, I play first-person shooters, but if I were to pick between playing Uncharted and Call of Duty, I like Uncharted a bit more. So some people love Call of Duty, some people don't really care for it. So it just really all depends on the person.
Now I'm curious, as a game designer, you try to like drown out all the noise because some might be people who don't understand game design, or some people don't appeal. Like, how do you know which is the right feedback to take and which is not the right feedback to take?
Man. Oh my goodness. Honestly, you just really gotta listen to people, man, because there are some people. I would definitely say when it comes to your game, when you're first making it in the beginning, try to have other designers look at it. Because right now, actually, for Project RubyShark that I'm on, we had like our first playable build months ago, and I'm in the Discord called the Design Den, which was created by a lead level designer at Massive Entertainment, and we have like a bunch of LDs from around the industry in there. And me and my friends, we posted our game in there, and we got a lot of feedback from, industry LDs. Like, I remember I had one guy who was he's an associate open world level designer for Ubisoft. And he sent me like a bunch of feedback about our game. And the guy who works at Massive Entertainment, who actually also worked on the Call of Duty games, he gave us feedback. We had people from Respawn. So I would definitely say in the beginning, like, try to have other designers look at your stuff and see, and then once you feel like you're in a good spot, then have other people play it. But yeah, as far as feedback, like, is this thing that you have to understand and get used to? Because sometimes people may think, because at the end of the day, it's your game, and you want to listen to feedback, but also don't try to deter from things. But always like when people are giving you feedback, just make sure to be respectful and make sure like, okay, yeah, I appreciate it. Because sometimes the thing about it is, I think what happens with some of us as who are creative, and I do this as well, is that when someone's giving us feedback, we tend to be a bit defensive because like, no, it's our thing. We're creating it. You know, it's our child. It's just, you know, like, hey, the person's not trying to belittle what you and your talent. They're just trying to help you to make something better. So yeah, and because the one thing what happens is if someone's giving you feedback and you don't take it, then they can be kind of like, okay, then why should I keep coming to you then? Why should I keep, you know, playing your game? Because you're clearly listening to what I'm saying. But, you know, take the feedback in, and when they give it to you, then be like, okay, well, you know, we're trying to go for this direction. Or like, okay, you know what, thank you, I appreciate that. And, you know, then you're working your way into it. And then once you have all that feedback on paper, then you look through and see like, okay, this person has something to say. Okay, this person said this. Okay, this person said, this person say, hey, maybe you should have like, you know, like fairy wings. And no, we're making Call of Duty. I think we're going to stay away from that. But we'll do it in the sequel or something. So yeah, it's just, you know, you just really have to figure out how to cut through it. And for people who, and it's always interesting for people who don't understand game development, because I think for a lot of people, the average person or even average gamer, a lot of them don't realize how much work and effort goes into making games. I mean, you look at something like GTA. GTA has like 500 developers on it, you know, and most people don't realize that. And even for me, there are times where people come in and say, "Hey, Nathan, I think I have an idea for a game." I actually have a funny story where I was starting graduate school, and I got a call from my old community college, one of my old community college coaches. And he called me. He was like, "Yeah, Nathan, I got an idea for this game or whatever. I want to pay you and people for it." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Like, let me see what he's saying." Then he was like, "I want you and your team to make like a game that's like the old NCAA games." And I was kind of like, "Whoa, wait, what, bro? Like, I'm not EA, but
You're like, hold on.
yeah. But for me, I'm the type of person where if someone doesn't know, I try to educate them because I feel like for people to learn, they have to be educated. And I remember I was like, okay, you know what, coach, let me go talk to my people, and then I'll see. So I actually talked to my professor who worked at EA about it, and he was giving me like some numbers that they did when they were like how many people were on EA, how long did it take. I was talking to a programmer friend of mine who was talking about like all the systems that would have to be done and things of that nature. And I think by the time I was done, man, I think the game, if he wanted us to make that game, would have been like probably up to $40 to $50 million, and that was just like the bare minimum. I remember I went back to my coach and I called him and I told him that. He was like, "Oh, well, we don't have that kind of money." I'm like, "Yeah, no, coach. So this is what it is." So I'm this type of person where if someone doesn't know, I don't sit there and I go, "Oh, well, this person's an idiot. Like you're going to meet there's a game with me." No, I was like, I'm going to go get some numbers, get some information, come back to you and say, "Hey, man, here's everything. Here's all this information. Now take it with what you want to do with it."
Yeah, that's a beautiful mindset, though. Instead of saying like, "Oh, you don't know," or belittle someone, or just like, "Yeah, you don't know," instead you're like, "Hey, let me educate you so that you have a better understanding of things, and then maybe you can move forward with it or not. At least you know."
Yes.
I think it'll make the world better if people just did that.
Yeah, people don't seem to realize that even like you, anyone really, like we know nothing about most things, or very little at least. Like you know a lot about like 5 subjects at most.
Yeah.
I think it's the ego. You gotta take the ego and leave it at the door.
Yeah.
Comes to taking feedback. They're not attacking you. They're attacking the idea, so that way we can. Not attacking it. They're saying things about it so it can be better. That's what all people really do.
Yeah.
90% of people.
Exactly. If someone's giving you feedback, like they care enough about your project to talk to you, like ideally in a polite way as well. So
Come on,
talk to them politely as well.
Yeah. Now, is there anything your professor from EA said that like sticks with you today?
Man, I think for me, so when it came to the NCAA games specifically, and this was stuff that, that it made sense, but just really thinking about it on a granular scale is the fact that when it comes to making a sports game, let's just talk about NCAA, for example. They have to try to get the licensing from all the universities So they got to get licensing from 100 different schools. They have to get licensing from like Nike, Under Armour, Russell, anything you can think of, just so they can try to have their stuff in game. And he said, something like that, it costs us a lot of money. And I think for me, just talking to him is just the fact of how much goes into it. And I think he told me like for NCAA games, they would have like 120 people working on the project. So yeah, and it's just like this for me, just really think of the sheer size of, how many people and the things that the hurdles you have to go through just so you can make these games. And we all know like NCAA games, the reason why they end up being sold because, a lot of college players saying they're using their name and likenesses. And unfortunately, the NCAA before didn't let you make money off your name and likeness because that's just the rules. So is this one of those things where there's so many hurdles to jump through when it comes to making those type of games that I think it really stuck to my mind. So it was just like, oh yeah, you're right, you have to pay all the universities. And think about it like this, like a University of Alabama, who was a national champion like 7 times, is going to want a lot more money than, a smaller school maybe in the middle of Texas, So it was just really thinking about those logistics that really stuck out to me.
Well, I never thought about that, but that's true. Like all the teams that they have to put in a game, they have to pay a portion
Yes.
of sales to them. Like I wonder how much that costs in total. I think for like FIFA for something, do they pay like all those teams, the ones around the world too? Like,
they would have to.
That's insane. So maybe it makes sense why they have this like weird microtransaction like frenzy of like things. 'Cause, like,
Yeah.
they make so much money from it, but does it really go to the people or does it go back to those?
Yeah, and it's probably easier also for FIFA or NBA or NFL that like you have a centralized, organizer for the sport or whatever you want to do. But for something not as centralized, it's probably harder. Like
Yeah,
like making a Ready Player One game. Oh my god!
yeah, 'cause like FIFA, maybe like they just pay some money to FIFA and they just don't do anything to the teams. Just say, "Oh, bye, see ya,
Yeah.
enjoy your rights to play our sport. Bye."
I don't think anybody would get too upset about that, right? Like nobody's gonna sue someone like, "Oh my gosh, you put me in a game, I'm not getting money." Or probably they would.
There's always someone.
Someone's always trying to find a reason to sue.
Free
You're right.
publicity. It sucks.
Yeah.
Like Nintendo suing streamers.
Really?
yeah.
Yeah, they were striking streamers and stuff. Like
That's insane. Wow.
yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So throughout your college experience, is there anything you can take, like one or like a sentence you can take away about like? Actually, no. What's the most important thing about game design for you?
For me, I would say everything you're doing is to make the game fun. Because the idea you have in the beginning is not going to be the game at the end. Because there are so many games that I've worked on where you have an idea and we're just like, oh, we're trying to make this, but then sometimes things evolve and things are different, and then it's something completely different. I'm trying to think for an example. Probably on one of my portfolios, there's probably one called Sphere, where it's like the sci-fi one, and the whole point of that game is you're rotating the entire level to move around the environment. So kind of like a Zelda dungeon, kind of like one of Breath of the Wild's dungeons. And in the beginning, that game was like a lot more, probably like a lot more smaller when it came to rotation. But then the thing was with that project, we had a lot of very talented artists. And the game that we at first talked about, they were like, guys, you make this game where you have these really small characters and these really small environment, you don't need 3D artists. So we ended up making it a lot bigger, made it more sci-fi, because we actually had a guy who wanted to be a hard surface modeler for the Star Wars games. And it's just that thing of where whatever you first make in the beginning, and things are going to change. And don't get married to your idea. And everything you do is all to make the game fun. Sometimes you could have a mechanic like, I really want to do this mechanic, and it's like, okay, yeah, but it's not going to work for our game right now. Because I've had it to where I would be working on the game, and there's something that I really want to put in. And it's like, okay, this is going to make it fun. This is going to make this game fun, and it just doesn't. So you just have to learn, everything you're doing is just the best for the game, and whatever makes it fun, that makes it fun.
Yeah, people tend to fall into the sunken cost fallacy a lot with game development.
Yes.
Even big companies do it all the time. Like spent 2 years developing this game. We have to finish to sell it. And then they spend twice as much making it and don't even make it back.
Yeah.
Not even half of it.
Sad.
Maybe they had too big of a scope.
Yeah, that's why Dark
know.
Phoenix sucks. The movie, of course.
Oh man, I didn't
It should
watch
never
it.
come out. Should just have stayed there. Like, no one needed to see it.
That's rough. So beyond, actually, wait. Before we move on to that, what is fun for you? Like, how would you define fun?
How would I define fun? Oh man, that's interesting. I don't think I've really. I don't know.
It's 42.
That's the answer to the universe.
Oh man. I don't know. I guess fun for me is just. I guess for me, what I find fun is just I'm playing a game or I'm doing something that really makes me kind of think, before I act. I like combat. I like games that have come make you think. So kind of Ghost of Tsushima, where
yes.
where you have like the 4 different styles and you're 5 different enemies, and you can be rushed by 3 enemies. And you have to know, like, okay, I'm going to use the water stance to like fight this guy off, and then switch to the stone stance. So I kind of like that, like kind of making me think quick on my feet, and just, or even like with Ghost of Tsushima, where it's like you're doing stealth and you're like, okay, if I take this route, I have to go here and like I'll assassinate this guy, and then I'll throw a dart at that guy. So I think for me, that's really making those decisions, which all games are. Games are just really a bunch of decisions that the player has to make, and I think that's what makes it a lot of fun. Is this, especially when it's a game where it's like you have different avenues to take, because then some people may play, Ghost Assassin's Creed, where they just go in and just start killing everybody. Some people might just do it where they may hit a guy with a poison dart and let him do some stuff, and they switch it by, So I think that's me, what I like a lot, and that's why I have different options when I'm playing the game.
No, I agree. My favorite games are games with many choices, like Detroit Become Human.
Oh that man, that game is
amazing.
Great. Yeah, it's
a great old story. Yeah, it's like what, and then it really shows that like your choices matter.
Yeah,
like I think that's another thing that we get with games. It's like, oh, you can always respond, but it's like life isn't like that. So like when you play a game like that where you can lose your main characters and the game will still go on until you lose all of them.
Yeah,
it's wild to me.
I thought that was great, because I remember for me, like when I would play games, I'm like, oh, I would, because some games, they have the quote unquote your choices matter, when it's like, I know that like some games where it's like, oh, you kill, like you can have this one person die or this other person die, but the endings are the same. And for me, with Detroit Becomes Human, I love, because like your choices really matter. Like the ending of the game can be so different depending on who lives and who dies. And I remember playing, I was just like, yo, okay, like this is really insane. And I think the guy, I can't think of the developer's name, the lead of that part, I think it took them like 2 years to write that script, because there's like over like 20 different endings to that game. Like it's ridiculous.
Yeah. And it all started from a little small video, and he was like, you know what? I have a game for that. So he wrote until he's like, this is it, and he made it. And I was like,
that's how that happens. It's all from an idea, like, hey, I got an idea for that, and then next year it's a 60-hour experience.
It's crazy. It's just like anything creative. I'm like that too. Like I can see a picture and I'll just be like, I see something. I see a story, and then you can run with that story. You never know what could happen. That's why I think games are great, because you can just make something come to life and it can grow into something beautiful, like the Assassin's Creed series or the God of War series. Or I love also a lot of the PlayStation games, like Detroit, Last of Us 2. How do you feel about Last of Us 2?
I definitely can see where people's anguish is.
Yeah.
I think for me, so I'm not sure if both of you have played, but there was definitely a part for me in the game where, because my point from the game when I played it is a thing where it's like everybody is a protagonist in their own story. Because it was a thing where it's like, Ellie thinks that she's doing the right thing because Abby did this, and Abby's thinking she's doing the right thing because like Joel did this. So I think for me, playing it, after playing it, really thinking about it, I was like, I think I can see where Naughty Dog was coming from. Are there some things they could have done a bit differently? Like, of course, I definitely, I think for me, I played it, I loved it because I'm a really big Naughty Dog fan. But I can definitely see where some of people's anguishes lie with it, for sure.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I I remember one of the. Actually, I don't feel like doing spoilers, but there are moments in the game where like I didn't like it, and then as the hours went on, I was like, I like this character actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I was like, and then things happen, and you're like, what? So and yeah, so many emotions, and I think that's what they wanted. I would say I agree with you that like I think the execution wasn't perfect. The idea was cool. I liked what they did. It's just I don't think it works for everyone, and
Right.
it is what it is. But I'm curious, there's like moments in the game where you start out with nothing and you kind of build up, and then you kind of do it again. Do you think it would have been cool if they did the reverse, where it was like you lose, you had everything, and you slowly lose it as you're going through this journey? Because I feel like that should be. I don't know if it'd be a good game design because you're certainly losing like less materials, less upgrades, less stuff. But I think it would fit the game aspect because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going through all this battles, losing friends, losing this, and now I don't have enough weapons. Where I started out with like all these weapons. Do you think that
Yeah.
make it more like impactful or fit with the narrative?
Maybe. I mean, that's definitely interesting. I do know for some players though, because it's a thing where like if you lose something that you really enjoy, it's like, oh my god, I lost this weapon. I think depending on how they're doing it, because actually for RubyShark, that I'm working on, because we're trying to make it like a whole seamless experience, and we're trying to where we have like special weapons in the game, but you're going to lose them. And I think for that is like depending on how does the player lose this thing. If you like, so if you're playing a game where you have a weapon that you really enjoy, and then the next level is just gone, it's like, wait, where's that weapon I had? But maybe if you do a thing where, let's just say, oh, you had to like open this door, so you need to use this weapon to pry open the door, and then the weapon breaks, or stuff like that. So I think really depending on how the player loses it, and to the point where like it makes sense, I think like then you can go that route. But yeah, I mean that definitely could have been an interesting idea.
Yeah, but at the same time, like people were kind of mad with Breath of the Wild with like weapons breaking. And it was like the weapons don't even have a personality. Like it's a stick.
Yeah,
I don't care about the stick.
Yeah, people were. I remember that was a really big complaint, and people were really bad about that. I was just like,
wait, so what happened? You just like used your weapon
the weapons
and break
break.
Yeah,
no,
they
they break over time. They have durability. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not like iconic weapons. They're not legendary or anything. It's like great sword or like axe.
Why did they do that? Just to give it a harder like experience?
To make you keep exploring, because then you need to always look for new weapons. So you're always in the state of having to explore the world. Because what happens in like open world games when you get to a higher level is that you have infinite weapons and everything's super powerful. You don't even open the chests anymore. You just keep going. And the game always feels like an adventure, at least for me. Like I played like 100 hours in like 3 weeks. It was a pretty good game.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I haven't had a chance to play it, but I've definitely heard for a lot of people, like it really encourages you, exploring the entire world.
Yeah, it's hard though. You know, as a game designer, but like to make everything mean something. Because a lot of moments where just like you throw stuff into a game, but like if there's nothing behind any of that, then it doesn't matter. Like you can have a cool open world, but there's nothing to do in the open world. What's the point?
Right, exactly.
You have to like guide players. Imagination comes like I used to do with Lego games where I'd play a game and just imagine a bunch of stories, but even then it's just like you have to allow those moments. Like the custom creators allowed me to do that, where I could build a Lego character, make a story for him.
Right.
So how did you go from masters to getting a job at what was your first job? It was at a game. Oh, is that internship? Michigan Health Information.
Oh yeah. So yeah, right now, so for RubyShark is actually more of a passion project between me and my friends. I am still currently looking for a job in industry. I've had a couple interviews. Like I've had a chance to interview with places like Insomniac, Sucker Punch, and Treyarch actually. But still trying to get that first foot in the door. But for RubyShark, I was in the Design Dead Discord with all those designers. And one of them, who's a friend of mine now, he was like, hey, we're looking for another LD for this project. We've seen your stuff, and we want you to kind of help us be like one of our leads for the project. And I talked to them about it. They interviewed me. And for me, because the whole point of the game is a mixture of like, say, Titanfall 2 with Doom rooms.
Okay.
Yeah. And that really, because I love Titanfall 2. Titanfall 2 is probably like one of my favorite shooters next to Doom. and that really intrigued me. So yeah, that was just them like reaching out, trying to find another LD, because unfortunately they had to let somebody go, and they were like, "Hey, we want you to come in and make us a level." So my whole thing is like I'm one of the design leads, so I kind of help out with the whole idea process of the game, sitting down with other designers, talking about their puzzles, their levels, their combat spaces, and just overall helping out managing the team.
So anybody who doesn't know or doesn't work in the industry at the moment, what is it like being a game designer, like a professional game designer? Like, how does it work at a studio?
Really, it's I mean, really, when you're working with like this people, man, just is really awesome because there's so many people that have so many different ideas, and sometimes you can have ideas that can pop up from just the random places. I mean, I've had games where I would have an artist say, "Oh, it'd be cool if the player does this," and you kind of sit there, you're like, "You know what? Yeah, that actually would be pretty cool. How come I didn't think of that?" I'm like, I'm a designer. That's kind of crazy. So it's because it's like this sitting with people talking about things, and a lot of times ideas and mechanics and this flow can just flow through. And it's really awesome because for me with RubyShark, it's really my first time working with because the internship that I did, it was for a health communication company where they were looking for people to help gamify some of their apps. So I was kind of there like leading the charge for that as an intern. Because it was like really them trying to get into game, like they just wanted to try to get into game design themselves, just to understand like gamification and sense. But for RubyShark, it's really for me the first time really working with other LDs who know just as much as I do or even more. So I've definitely been able to learn a lot. I learned a lot of things from them, and definitely my work has improved a lot over time.
Awesome. What is your workflow like every day? Do you like continue to learn new things? How do you keep your skills on top?
I mean, I would definitely say, yeah, just trying to just learning new workflows, learning new things. I love watching GDC videos about level design because there's always gems, and sometimes I will rewatch them because there's always like hidden gems that you may miss. Talking to the other designers on the team about like, hey man, I'm thinking about doing this level like this. What do you think? Oh, I think that'd be cool. We do it like this. So it's just really, or even what I also do is like going on ArtStation and just looking at art that can sometimes inspire you to make a space. Because as a level designer, because to me, I feel like when you're a level designer, you're also an artist, and artists always need reference when they're working on something. So just really going up on there and just trying to find different references or different spaces. It's like, oh, that's a cool picture. What if I did this, but like this? So yeah, just really just looking to be like, creative as much as you can and soaking in creativity from whatever, whether it's looking at art, watching movies, watching TV, playing other games itself.
I love the stuff you have in your ArtStation. It's really cool. The Whiplash trailer and all the different levels you made. And
yeah.
The cowboy one. How long does it take you to usually make these levels? Is it like a process? Like you plan it, make?
Oh yeah. I think because Whiplash, that's probably one of the most fun games I've worked on. Whiplash was a semester-long project, and that was a semester-long project. And I went through. Of course, I played the game because So the thing about that game, I actually kind of joined it late because it was made for another class. Where they did a prototype because the whole point of that game is like you're throwing axes. And kind of like God of War. I remember playing the prototype, and I was really in love with the prototype. Like I was like, "Yo, guys, like I want to make a level for this game. Like, can I make a level for it?" They're like, "Yeah, sure." And for me, just really, it took a whole semester because I would make a top-down view, of course, drawing out the space, understanding like, okay, how is the player going to move through the space? Then I will also make like really rough blockouts in Maya because it's the LD. Like using Maya was really, really helpful. And then just going in there and building and just iterating upon iterating. I think that level I made for Whiplash, it probably went through like probably 4 to 5 major iterations over the semester.
Hey, but that's how you get it to the point where it's amazing.
Yes.
Fun to play with.
Yes.
That game looks so cool. It does. It's like God of War, but we have 2 axes now, and you're just destroying the robots.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. It's in VR too. It was interesting to design levels in VR because it was like, you're trying to guide the player as much as you can because now in VR the player is now in the space and they're trying to figure out where to go. So it just feels like you have to be even twice as obvious. I'm like, hey, yes, go down this hallway, make a turn here. And especially the movement itself was different because we're using a teleporter. The way how you move in Whiplash is there's these different markers that are like blue that are on the wall, and you throw at them and you pull your VR controller to them. So even like the movement itself, it was like a whole different thing to design for. Like that was a game where I spent a lot of time just on making sure moving through the space felt good.
Wow, awesome. Now I'm curious, what advice would you have for anybody who is just starting out and they want to do level design?
Just starting out, want to do level design. Man, I would like I think I said before, like play a game. I would say play a game you really like. Look at a game you really enjoy and really love, and just try to make a level for that. I know modding is also a really good start as well. I've never modded myself per se, never had. But I know a lot of designers in the industry now who start off making mods in Radiant for Call of Duty or maybe something for Doom. Yeah, man, just go in there and start building things because when you start building things, you start learning. So, and I will always think when you look at games that have really good level design, see what they did well, and then you try to create that and try to recreate the space. I actually have studies in my portfolio where I've made levels from games that I really enjoy, just so I can understand, like, okay, how do they, know what objects to spawn and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. It's terrific advice.
Mm-hmm.
So we've reached near the end of the podcast, and before we end it off, I'd like to ask the guests a little challenge for this community. So you can come up with a small challenge for all the viewers to do after the podcast. It could be about anything, design, whatever you would like.
Man, a challenge, man. I guess for me, a challenge is I would tell somebody, make a level that fits in your favorite game.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Because I've seen people do that before, and it's just like if you like The Last of Us, think of a town and try to make it work for The Last of Us. If you like Doom, think of a Doom combat space. So think of a game you really enjoy and you really love, and try to make a level for that.
Beautiful, awesome. Thank you for coming on. This has been an amazing conversation. Learned a lot about web design, and congrats on coming in second place in the competition. And hopefully you get that Treyarch job, or the other one's Insomniac, because that would be insane. Work on the next Spider-Man.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and we just like to end it off by handing the mic to you to do any last minute shout outs, quotes, tips, whatever you like to end it off. And thanks for coming on. The mic's all yours.
Yeah. No, first, shout out to you guys for inviting me on the podcast. Really appreciate it. It's an honor being here. I would definitely say also RubyShark. Follow us on Twitter at RubyShark Games. Shout out to Michigan State and Texas A&M for giving me all the wonderful tools and things to being in game dev. And man, big shout out to my family because with them inspired me and encouraged me to follow my dream.
Well, that's it. Thanks for listening. You can find all courses at GameDev.tv or in the show notes at a discounted price. Get started with your game development journey today.